All right, the ladies said it's recording. Here we are on The Blind Man in Black. I'm Brian Snyder. Thank you for watching on YouTube and listening on Apple Podcast. And if you like my wife and I being totally exhausting and crazy, go to the Exhausting Snyders on TikTok. So we have a great. It's going to be a podcast on podcast conversation again, and the focus of this is going to be basically brainstorming. We're going to brainstorm about creating our new podcast, The Exhausting Snyders, based on our TikTok show. And we have a couple guests. First of all, Fawcett, who has been here before. He is the co-founder of Chobo, which is a podcast content creation, basically studio and rental space. And so thank you so much for being here.
Worries. Thank you guys for having me. It's great to be back.
All right. And Randy Owen, who has also been on the show before. He is a assistive technology trainer, and he is also a podcast content creator for the Beyond Barriers Unscripted podcast. Did I say it right, or did I fuck that up?
No, you did great. You say okay.
BBU, yeah. Beyond Barriers Unscripted podcast. So thank you for being here, Randy, who is going to be our producer and editor for The Exhausting Snyders.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right. So you're exhausted, right, Randy? Let's be honest about where we're all at, really.
I'm here, and I've also been on the show before. Hi,
yes. Yes.
I'm Brian Snyder's co-host and wife. You may have heard of me. He might.
I was going to get to you.
You were not.
I was.
No.
I was. Now we're going to start the show like this.
It's a real Will Smith start here.
So this is how we're going to start it. All right. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'm exhausted. I'm trying to hold it together. I just spent like an hour trying to do TikTok, and it is totally fucking inaccessible.
And I just stitched your TikTok in like 30 seconds with like a snarky reply.
What?
I stitched yours. Like it popped up on my feed like immediately.
Wait a minute. Did it? No way. It popped up.
Mm-hmm. Did you not want it to? Because it's.
I gotta go look.
No, because it. Oh fuck! I want to take that off there because.
That's just so exhausting.
Well, it's going to be on there for an hour. So
no, because I fucked up the joke, and then I thought it didn't post, so I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, no, it always posts.
TikTok
is unforgiving.
Fuck. Now I got to take that off because the joke doesn't even make sense.
Anyway, moving on. We'll talk about that later.
I'm really, it's going to throw me off for this whole thing. So now that's all I'm going to be thinking about.
I'm just kidding. It doesn't exist. I never saw it.
Okay. All right. So let's start off. So I don't even know where to begin. We're going to do the Exhausting Snyders, which Indy, I know you probably haven't seen it yet, but it's basically the Exhausting Snyders TikTok page is us. Rachel, why don't you describe it? You describe it much better than I do.
It's me basically picking on Brian. We're playing characters that are inflated in versions of ourselves, and I basically. He wants to go places and I don't want to take him. So I take him to places and tell him that that's where we are. Like I took him to the sinkhole by Rayleigh's and told him we were at the Grand Canyon. And I took him to Deer Creek, the NID ditch up here, and told him that we were at the Colorado River. And so it's just me kind of basically being, kind of a jerk to him because he's blind. And I don't know, people really like that for some reason. Like, and one of them, he's walking down the street and I stop and ask him why he's not home yet. And he said I was supposed to pick him up and I forgot. And I was like, oh, so sorry. Well, I'm on my way, so I don't have time to stop. And he asked for water. I'm like, oh, I don't have any, but I totally do. And then he gets lost. Then I come home and I'm like, oh, what took you so long? You haven't started dinner yet. He's like, well, I got lost. I'm like, well, I found you some water in my car. It's warm. Like I kind of have to see it to get it. But basically we travel to different places without really traveling. And I find ways to convince him that we are in landmark places. Like I took him to the car wash and told him it was Niagara Falls.
and so the concept of time gone here. Do you just drive around in circles for a couple hours and then?
No, she chloroformed me.
So we came
it's
up
just
with
for the content.
So this is in my car frequently. This bottle, it's a chloroform. It's not a chloroform bottle, but so it did come up after like the second. Oh well, how does he not know that we're not driving for us? So I chloroform him. I find different ways to do that, and then I just tell him he sleeps in the car and he's boring, and I have no one to talk to. Thanks a lot, and blame it on him.
Wow, well, that's a really succinct analysis of your TikTok page. That's great. No, I can tell why people would gravitate towards it. It's sensational.
Well, it was an accident. It was just my TikTok that I was playing around with my kid. We we're just not doing anything serious with it. And Brian and I were on a trip, and we were walking on the beach in Humboldt, and he kept pulling me towards the water, but it was high tide was coming up, and there's sneaker waves up there. It's not safe to be too close. And I kept telling him we're too close to the water. And he goes, no, we're not. No, we're not. And I was like, how would you know? And so we were just joking, like, yeah, it's true. You could just turn me against the mountain, tell me I was facing the water, I wouldn't even know. So that's what we did. He was facing the mountains. And I was like, yeah, smell that sea air, and we just posted that, and it went viral is what happened. Just that one, and we were just messing around with it. And then we had one right afterwards where we went to an outdoors movie, and he walked up and sat down backwards and asked if he was facing the screen. And I said, yes. And then our son goes, it's over there. I'm like, shh. And that one I think we have 8. What do we have on that one, Brian? We have.
Well, I mean, it went up to like 60,000 very quickly.
Well, like in 2 days.
No, it's got a couple million views, actually.
Oh, wait, which one are we talking about?
The theater one, the one that.
The drive-in.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the ocean one.
No, the theater one has almost 4 million views. And it's super short and simple, and so then we just started actually writing them, and they got more elaborate. But yeah, that was an accident. So.
Well, that's how that's how those viral moments happen, right? Yeah.
So Indy, what we're trying to do is now we have this podcast, but what I wanted to do was not make it so Brian centric, and showcase my wife's talents. And so that's part of the transition to the Exhausting Snyders. But also I wanted to increase the production quality of it, so that it was a little bit, not only just tighter in general, but I really want to just focus on the content creation rather than the technical aspect of it. So, and that's where Randy comes in. And so, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about in terms of creating our podcast? Like, what are some key points that you can kind of direct us to?
Yeah, totally. I'd say off the bat, in general, as much as Zoom is great, I think if people see a Zoom podcast, they just turn away. They just move on to something that's better quality.
So you're saying this is just what we're doing right now is not working, so we need to cut that out.
Yeah, everything you've done up until this point, just delete and
just dump that and just do anything different. Anything.
Okay.
No, it's but that's the thing though. It's like I do that, right? Like there's a podcast that I haven't followed in a while because they started in the pandemic, and it's the Bill Burt podcast. It's Burt Kreischer and Bill Burr, and their podcast was in person before the pandemic, and then it was on Zoom during the pandemic, and I just stopped listening because Bill Burr's voice on a Zoom call is way worse than just Bill Burr's voice. So I was just like, I can't anymore. So that's the thing. It's like, in terms of production quality, the way you can change that, it's like, obviously it doesn't necessarily mean not utilizing Zoom. That's, it's a tool to create podcasts too. It's not going Zoomless, right? But it's just trying to utilize it when you have no choice not to. So like in the situation where I was producing on our previous Blind Man in Black episode with John Huck, we were producing Speaking Highly with John Huck, which is currently on hiatus just because we haven't been producing more episodes, but that was an entirely Zoom produced show that didn't end up being a Zoom call. Right. So I gave John a camera and a recorder and a mic and lights. Right. And he kept those for however long I think we were doing that for a year. and he would record on his end, I would record on my end, and we would just talk over a Zoom call and then bring a guest in. And then basically when the guest would speak, that's the Zoom audio and the Zoom video. But then when John would speak, it's his camera and his recorded audio. So it's a lot more post-production to up that quality game, but also what you gain in that is not losing people, right? So it's kind of a it's just a change in workflow. It's not necessarily like completely changing what you do. It's just how it's made, right? So the ways you can do that, right? Video podcasting is really hard to do with a DSLR camera. They record certain cameras are taxed at different rates for camera manufacturers. So that's why most consumer cameras that you buy from Best Buy or Amazon, those by law can't record longer than 30 minutes, just because cameras that record longer than 30 minutes are taxed at a different rate than cameras that record at a smaller duration. So that's why you need to buy it's just like certain technical things that you just wouldn't realize you needed to know. But the way you can combat that is, like, if you have a DSLR camera, you don't want to buy another camera, you can buy a video switcher with a recorder, right? So there's the A10 Mini Pro, which you can connect into an SSD hard drive, just an external hard drive and you just press record, and then your standby feed from your DSLR camera just goes via HDMI straight into your switcher and record that way. So there are ways to get around it. It's just super technical. And it just kind of basically whatever you need to do, it just kind of need to outline what that is, and then just kind of like reverse engineering a better quality path to get that result. So I could speak all day on this, so please stop me and have questions or
why don't we go to, I do want to talk about the technical stuff. But I want to just give you an idea of what we kind of decided. Randy and Rachel and I were all talking about, what is the spine or the through line of this new podcast. And, it basically, Randy mentioned the idea of using some of our, what was the main thing you were talking about, Randy?
Well, you guys were talking about, telling your story, going back and forth, but I think that some of your, some of the TikToks that you guys have, you could probably use pieces of that. You've mentioned using clips from your comedy, I thought.
Right. Yeah, but I think what happened in our original meeting is you helped us kind of formulate the spine of it. And the idea was we would take moments from our marriage and our life, and using that as the basis for each episode. So for example, when Rachel and I first met, we texted for like 2 days, and we actually have a transcript of those texts. And one of the things, like the moment that really brought Rachel and I together was at the very beginning. I knew that she had cancer, but I didn't know what type of cancer she had. So I thought, I'm going to make a joke, and if she doesn't laugh, I don't think this is going to work out in any way whatsoever, even friendship wise. So I'm like, I'm going to just make a joke and see what happens. So I asked her via text, I said, what type of cancer did you have? Testicular? And she responded simultaneously with prostate. And so that was the beginning that we were thinking about. That would be the beginning of our podcast is how we met. And then, kind of also making that like having a theme for each episode based on, our relationship. Is that right, Rachel? Am I explaining it correctly, or am I too exhausted to explain it?
No, that was right. I was just lamenting at the the cojones on you to ask me that. and how irritated I was that your answer came through first, because that was my joke. But yeah, we are, we both have some pretty unique circumstances that we were under when we met, or that are continuous, but that in a way brought us together. And there's a lot of stories in that. And a lot of, a lot of my other work that I've done for other things, my goal has been to find the tiniest story, it's like, here's a story, and then go deeper until you have this tiny thing, which not only allows for oodles of content, but also, has like a really tight focus on something that people can relate to. So we were just kind of going to do that with our relationship being the frame, and also our different issues, which obviously mine is cancer survival and Brian's is, the whole eye thing.
Yeah, I have a lot of issues. I have blindness,
That's another
obsessive compulsive disorder. I have a lot of problems, and so there's a lot of material there.
Yeah. I think that's a great. I mean, those are fertile grounds for conversation, right? Like those, like you won't have any problem filling an hour, right? Like, or however long the show is. So when I'd say double down on that. So like if you realize that what does well on TikTok is that you put Brian in these situations, or in these situations where he's either uncomfortable or doesn't know, or it's mostly ironic, right? Or it's like the audience knows but he doesn't, right? So like I guess just providing more situations for that to flourish more, right? In the podcast, in a longer form, where it's like, I don't know what situations you could bring up or certain scenarios, but it could be framed in a way where it's a segment, and you only spend 10 minutes on it a week or whatever, and then you guys just go in the zone. And like my girlfriend and I have a segment in our TikTok show called This or That. No, it's either or. She I think we have both segments. And she shows me two terrible TikTok clips of like somebody getting hurt, or like someone tripping, or somebody getting hurt or whatever. And I have to pick which one I would rather do. Like get hit by the car or fall down the stairs, like which scenario would I rather be in, so it's like setting up the pins to knock them down, right? Like, so, yeah. And then also like I think if you do it a long enough time where you can create more of these zones, more of these segments, then I think your audience kind of comes to expect these and kind of gets somewhat excited for them, because they've been with you the whole time. So I think just doubling down on what makes your TikTok successful already is what will make your podcast, thrive, and at least to a point where it be, monetizable.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of transferring those people over from TikTok.
Yeah, I noticed that when when we have to take a break because he's busy or something, and I just do a couple little random things, obviously the numbers drop, but then if we do anything, even if it's not up to par with the rest of what we've done, everybody's like, "Oh, you're back! Oh, thank God! Yay!" And they just it's like they don't even acknowledge or notice the things that aren't that formula. And we because since I'm kind of playing a villain on some level, we try to turn it around on me every once in a while, like I go to get I spend too much to get my hair done. So the next month I have to get a dog bath out in the yard, and Brian's hosing me down with the garden hose. So every once in a while I get mine, I get it back, which is important, I think, because otherwise I think I'd have stalkers trying to, hurt me.
And I think that's a great way to also like say, like I guess you had mentioned earlier about monetization. Like, obviously, if you I think it's like 100,000 downloads or interactions a month is like the basis, like the minimum basis you need to even get a sponsor.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like if you're not hitting those thresholds, really the only way is Patreon, or some subscription based content delivery system where it's, hey, this show is only on Patreon. If you like us, you're going to have to come here, because there's no, it's going to be 6-7 years if we even grow the channel to even get to a point where it's publicly monetizable. Right. So the way that I would even frame this kind of like, if you like our stuff and you want to support us and support this continuing, you get more stuff, you get it early, like you could put the podcast there early. You could take suggestions from your patrons to, victimize Brian, victimize you.
Yeah.
Like,
what about bloopers?
There's just so many ways you could take it.
Bloopers, we do end up with a lot of bloopers that are pretty funny. And I always wanted to play a game. I still want to do this where we play Who Knows More About Being Blind, me or Brian, because when we first started dating, I did all this research, and he's like, well, you know what you're getting into, and then we were trying to talk about it. I'm like, well, what about this one? He's like, I don't know anything about that. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna have a game show, and I'm gonna win. So I mean, there's
Awesome.
tons, there's plenty. We're full of content.
Yeah.
I think that, and I already started a Patreon. Like I set up a Patreon account. I set up, Randy, just so you know, I set up a Gmail and a Drive and a Twitter.
Okay.
I set all the
Yeah.
accounts up. I haven't done anything with them yet, so that's all done. And I also spoke with the guy that we would like to do our logo, and he said he would love to. We just have to tell him what we want.
Beautiful.
Deadline. So that's what I did, action item wise. That's the last time we met. But yeah, I think Patreon. I haven't used it yet.
It's like MySpace. It's
I'm
one
very
of the most
familiar with it.
rudimentary websites I've ever used, actually.
Okay.
So don't be scared of it. It's literally kind of like, oh, like this is what it is.
Yeah, and the people that I know that have used it, they're like, this is like a trickle, it's a trickle income thing. It's not gonna carry anything,
But here's the thing: it's like if people love you already, like that's your audience. Like you don't need to like scream into the void to some audience that's not listening yet. Like the people who are listening are the people who are going to be your patrons. So
that's what I'm talking to. Yeah.
So of all the people who would pay, they're already listening. So like that's where you could tap into, and the more that they participate and they can feel like they're a part of this community with you, then they'll tell their friends, or if their friends are like-minded, that who knows, they'll become a patron, and it could just trickle effect in 10 years. Like who knows how many patrons you could have. Like a comedian I follow, Tim Dillon, he makes over 200 grand a month on Patreon, and that's 40,000 patrons. So it's not even like 40,000 followers, like at least followers is like not even that much, right?
Yeah,
But 40,000 patrons is 200 grand a month, and his cheapest tier is $5.
Right.
So like you're raking in millions a year just because of the quality or what you bring. If your audience thinks it's valuable, they'll pay for it. So it's just a matter of kind of offering that.
Well, we want to try to have like a year's worth of content already pre-written, or at least pre-outlined, so that we're not scrambling for anything.
Mhm.
And I think we talked about last time about, Brian, we wanted to open it up for questions so people could call in and actually not call in before the show, and then we'd address. Brian, are you still with us?
Yeah. No. I was listening to you. I just wanted to.
I'm trying to remember exactly.
I wasn't sure if you're trying to hand it off. So
yeah.
No. The idea would be that we pose a question, and we would probably most likely do it on social media first. Say like, hey, we have this question. Call in. Or we have a concept, and if you have any questions or something, call in, and then we'll take those recordings and play them.
Right.
It's kind of like what Sarah Silverman does.
I've done that on a few podcasts that we do with a Google Voice number, and just people leave messages and you can download the file. Yeah, those are incredible, and also like facilitate that community, right? Because like you could just start, like, say if you get 1 or 2 patrons and they communicate somewhat, at least you could front that and go, hey, our new patrons, this person, and they said they added this suggestion, and so the more that people think, oh, what if I become a patron? They might talk about what I have to, so that could just snowball.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, Indy, so you're saying if we start the Patreon thing, so you think based on our TikTok following that some of those followers may pay a monthly subscription to our new podcast?
I'm saying yes, in a way where those are your already viable customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people have already signed up, or at least clicked follow, right? So of the, those are the people you should be focusing on, right? So wherever you have the biggest following, that's your funnel through which you can get a patron. So like, I don't know if you're aware, I'm not super well versed in this, but I think they're called click funnels, or in marketing, I think it's some sort of funnel, or like a marketing funnel where, like, say if you reach 1 million people, half of those people will be interested, but half of that half will click, but half of that half would actually purchase something, but out of 1 million people, you get 5 customers or 100, however many end up at the end of that funnel. right? So it's just
Yeah.
kind of analyzing where, you know, how big your funnel is and kind of going, okay, we need to get X amount of patrons. So how do we funnel people into that, right? So it's just creating content, going, hey, you know, our show only exists here. If you like us, you want to see more content, and it's fun, exciting, and you know, Brian doesn't know what's happening. You know, if you want to be a part of that, and you know, provide situations for, you know, and then also you could put that content out just later on YouTube, right? And then people who are watching are going, oh, I could have watched this a week ago, you know.
Right.
So it's just kind of like not necessarily producing more. It's just kind of putting you know, giving it out in a different way.
Is Patreon like Jumpstart? What's kind of where it has different tiers? Like you can do different tiers.
Yeah, it's just add tier, type in money, add description, next tier, add money. Yeah, it's pretty it's really rudimentary. They kind of walk you through the entire step.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Did you mean Kickstarter?
Yeah, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
I
Guys,
like jump. Maybe we should start one called Jumpstarter.
well, we got enough on our plates. I think.
Yeah, and basically it's kind of it's really not it's not really like a content hosting site. It's like you'd upload it to YouTube unlisted,
Right.
and then give your patrons an unlisted link,
Gotcha.
right? Or they do have a Vimeo add-on, which you have to pay for, of course.
Yeah.
That is basically you put it on Vimeo first and then give the link, and then nobody could they can only watch it through patreon.com, no other .coms. Like they couldn't even watch it on Vimeo. So like if you pay for it, there is a way to like keep your patrons from giving the unlisted link to somebody.
Oh, okay.
But also like if they're paying for you, they're loving people. They want to support you. So
Yeah, that's
you know,
fine. I don't have a problem with people sharing
you-
those links.
right. If you what's another person, right? Like that's actually valuable, you know. So I think it's basically just the unlisted YouTube link. And you go, hey guys, here you go, early.
But so Brian, what we could also do is we could have tiers that are like, for this tier, you give us a scenario and we'll do that. Or, you know, for this tier, Brian will make you your own personalized voicemail, or, you know, like all kinds of weird random crap that you could do, but in different price points.
Yep.
So,
And you can even go up to 100 or more. Like who knows, there may be a rich person who likes you.
Yeah.
You know, who's like, I don't mind giving $100 a month.
I don't think any rich people like me. I'm pretty sure they don't.
We're in
sometimes
Northern
you-
California, so who
people like
knows? There's a lot of Silicon Valley folks out there.
Right.
I was gonna say, I know some rich people that might like me, and that's maybe.
Yeah, $5,000 tier. Yeah, there you go.
Right. So what do you think, like everybody, this is open to everybody. What do you think makes a great podcast? Anyone?
I'd say
Something
practical,
relatable.
practical information that you could use, or an escape.
Something that people can relate to. That's kind of just real.
Right.
Yeah, but isn't so personal that it's not, you know, like hearing people talk about super, like their day with each other, it drives me nuts. If they make it relatable, if they put it in a way that makes, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, it can be built around something like, you know, I said something awkward and then I caught it, but I said it in public, and I'm drawing a blank right now for an idea, but we've all had embarrassing moments, and people can relate to that, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard some, especially with couples, where they're just like, well, and then you did that thing. Oh yeah, that thing I do, and they're not really letting you into the secret, or, you know, the joke or whatever all the time, because they're just so used to talking to each other, and so they're just doing that, and they're not keeping the audience in mind. That's more what I meant.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's so many factors to making things a good podcast. Guests make a podcast better.
Yeah.
There are just so many things. Like I would say that at the core of it, it's just useful information, right? Like, or just an escape. Like I'm a huge fan of comedy podcasts. That's like all I watch. But like I just found this podcast, this new one that just launched recently called The Cave. It's on the YouTube channel called Cave 313, and it's
Sounds real dark web.
it's all about like Black youth and tackling their trauma, and using discipline and using martial arts and using practical ways to navigate their trauma, and it's a very, very deep, very interesting podcast. But like it's not it's not funny.
What
But
was
that's
the
a great
name of it? What was
podcast.
the name of that?
It's called
The
The
Cave?
Cave. It's on they're on their third episode, and it's on the
Oh,
YouTube
okay.
channel. I've only watched it on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. It's called Cave 313.
See, I wouldn't know that from the title at all.
Yeah, I dug a little bit deeper. They have a martial arts program called The Cave.
All
So
right.
it's a whole, it's their niche, right? They found their funnel, right?
So-
yeah.
I don't know how Brian feels about this, but one of the things that made the TikTok work so well is that when we did the movie theater one, I had a lot of people saying, well, that was really mean. He's embarrassed. You know, how would you embarrass him, humiliate him that way? And he has no way. He's totally vulnerable and helpless and can't figure out where the screen is by himself. And that gave me an opportunity to kind of teach a little bit and be like, he knows where the screen is, and this is how, you know. And
Right,
so
right.
then I did a video afterwards that was just me. That was like, all right, because there's so many comments that were ignorant to the situation, right?
Right,
So and to the ocean one too, they're like, well, he can feel the sun on his face, right? There's just a lot of misconceptions. So I took that opportunity to teach some stuff just about blindness in general, which really should be Brian's. You know, Brian should be the one teaching. That feels kind of weird me doing it, but I'm the one with the spare time. So, but I did that a few times where I bounced off of comments that were, you know, showing ignorance to the situation and used them as a teaching moment. But I don't know if Brian wants to do that. If we were going to integrate, you know, you're saying either escape or good info. Like if we were going to integrate that into Brian, would you be interested in keeping that theme? Because I really thought that's what people were really interested in. I think they're interested in Brian. They're interested in how, you know, blindness is a very mysterious thing. A lot of people don't know about it. They don't want to ask anything. So I found a lot of people really interested in my explanations and that kind of stuff. So, and that education thing, I think it's important, but I know Brian doesn't want it to be, you know, blindy blind show.
Well, I mean, I think Rachel is hilarious and she's charismatic and she's fun to listen to. And I just want it to be balanced. You know what I mean? That's what I think that we work really well together. And if we can showcase that in a balanced way, I think that's great. And I mean, it'd be great to have an educational aspect to it, which is fine. You know, I want it to be funny because that's, you know, I love comedy as well. And the other thing I think what makes a great podcast for me is it makes me feel, and I think this is the same because that's why I love comedy, is great comedy makes you feel like you're not alone in this world. And I think that's what I also like for this podcast is that people feel like they're with us and that they're not alone and that and I guess it goes back to being relatable, but yeah, that's important to me as well.
And we did get a lot of feedback. We have, you know, from the videos from people who were either parents of blind children or, you know, people dealing with losing their eyesight, or people like me who are, you know, who are coupled with someone who has, and they were just like, oh, you know, just some camaraderie, because there's no like, not a lot of groups where everybody gets together and talks about it. So they definitely attracted that as well. And I don't know, Randy, you've seen most of them. My little educational ones are kind of funny, right? I mean, they're not super dry. I have one where I pull out all of his assistive equipment and pretend like I'm not supposed to be playing with it, but I am, and I'm showing it off. I'm like, oh, look at this one, what this does, you know, and it's, you know, I keep it light.
And TikTok has a huge community of people that are interested in folks with disabilities and learning. In the blindness community, because mine kind of centers around blindness. You know, there's a lot of people out there. I forget what I'm trying to say. Sorry.
You're so tired.
I'm really exhausted.
Just tell me I'm funny.
Were you rocking out, by the way? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, we had a jam session this morning.
I think you overdid it.
And I did not sleep well last night. And yeah.
I think you rocked too hard, man.
Yeah, I'm feeling sorry for you thinking you're overworked, but really
I keep thinking of the time I was doing cane training and I walked up and I grabbed that guy by the beard and he didn't say anything.
See, that's fantastic.
But that's
you grabbed the guy by the beard?
Yeah, I was doing O&M training and I had shades on, the learning shade, the sleep shades, and the instructor had said we were over at a park that I had been to sighted before, so I need to lay out of the park, and she's, "I'll go ahead and explore." So I've got my cane and I hit something metal. Oh yeah, it's a park bench or a drinking fountain. So I reach out, and there was a guy sleeping on. He was sitting up, and I grabbed his beard. I got a handful of beard. I knew instantly
Well, at
what
least
it
you
was.
didn't get a handful of balls. That's good.
But the thing is, he didn't say anything, and it's like, and I
Maybe
could
he was
just,
into it.
Well, I mean, I could just imagine if I was sleeping there and I woke up and some guy with sleep shades grabbing my face. And yeah. So, I mean, there's real life stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah. I mean, that's half of my list is stuff that I've observed Brian experiencing out in the world that is not, blind friendly. And then also, I've got a few of those myself because I have, I had a full mastectomy and I have prosthetic, and there's no feeling there at all. So I've run, laid them on people's arms when I'm reaching for stuff, and I've dipped them in people's coffee and not known it at work, like in the middle of meetings. There's funny stuff about both of it for sure.
My wife was telling me a story about her cousin and her grandmother, or his grandmother, had prosthetics, and when they were little boys, they had found them and they were playing football with them.
Mine are actually reconstruction, so they're permanent, but they've been funny. They've been, funny because it has to be, because oh my gosh, it was so humiliating and weird at first, and then I'm like, you know what, we're just gonna go clown boob and laugh about it, because otherwise.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, tit cancer is a part of it as well, and it's the underlying foundation of all of this is loss, because Rachel lost her boobs, I lost my eyesight and my mind, essentially, for most part. But
yeah.
What's that?
Well, no, I did too. When I was sick, I totally went nuts afterwards, and we both lost our careers due to our our health issues. Very promising ones, both of us, and we both experienced. So when we met, we had that in common. That was something that it's hard to find someone who understands either one of those things if they haven't experienced it, but they have similar trajectories. They have similar problems and pluses, and cancer cards and blind cards. Those are big, heavy cards that you can slap.
But the thing about it is I think that most people know somebody that has had cancer or is blind. You know what I mean? So there's the relatable factor.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, to add to that too, it's like what makes your, I kind of alluding it back to the content thing, right? It's like what makes you guys great, or what makes that page successful, is the both of you.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's not like this should be his show. It's like strip that. It's both of yours. Like it's the Snyders. It's exhausting Snyders, right? So
yeah.
What's great about that is doubling down on both of you. So it's like, it's not that you're boring and he's the blind guy, and you know what I mean, or you're just helping the blind guy. It's literally like you have your own past and your own truth, and it's like it's just as heavy as what he's going through. And I think that's a valuable, like, to be. It's like what you were saying. You were kind of downplaying that you take care of the blind guy, right? Where it's like you have gone through your own thing, So it's I think that's extremely valuable to say if a wife is one of your audience members who's watching the show and is caregiving, or if a male's watching, and I think it's just, you guys give such a different dynamic where it's so eclectic. Like any type of person who would come across your stuff can be related to it, because it's just, there's so much there.
Right.
So I think, just like nailing or doubling down on that on the both of you really will solidify this working.
Well, and I think
that's what people are already wanting.
Really good too. I just think that the thing that people are most curious about is his blindness. That's been the thing that I think is the most mysterious thing that makes people want to ask questions and stuff. I mean, my story's interesting too, but it's also common. So, more.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's, I think the other thing is you can hide it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally. Or it's a bonus in a lot of cases because
yeah, I mean, unless your tits are out, and about, you can hide it. And with this blindness, it's a visible disability. And also it's also,
no pun intended.
it's also one of the most scary disabilities that people have the most fear around.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
100%.
Yeah, that was one of the first things we talked about is he said, most people that's going blind is the thing that people fear most out of any health thing. I was like, well, that's not true, because I read that getting cancer is, and then we both looked it up, and it was actually kind of equal articles that said both things. So there's no, the jury's still out on which one is true, but all the studies, it was one or the other.
Yeah, maybe that could be a game you guys can play, like,
right?
who can feel sorry for us the most?
Which one's worse?
Yeah.
Could do a whole episode at the airport.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, that could be.
But
you
see,
could really make something out of that.
Him being blind at the airport is great for me because I get fast forwarded everywhere and I can sit in the front.
But he's a proud man and he refuses to do the priority boarding.
No, I will not let him.
No,
I'm not proud when it comes to that.
I when we went to Oklahoma, I was, and I learned a big lesson. Coming back. Yeah, take it if you can.
I'm the reason we have a placard, because I was like, why don't we have one of those? Go get one.
Brian's like skipping in front of military at the airport. Excuse me, sir. And it's like,
the first time we fly there, they're just like, oh, come with us, and they just took us like this back way and like all the way to the gate. We'd have to go through security. I'm like, this is amazing. I think I was pulling on us. That was a little weird, but
when you had to take your shoes and stuff off, when you go through the metal detectors, did you feel rushed?
No,
I did.
I mean, it depends on the situation, but for the most part, they're patient with me. I mean, I had an experience where they were I don't remember what airport, but they were super impatient with me putting stuff into the X-ray machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they put my shoes on top of my computer and things like that I wasn't really happy about, but I've had a lot of weird experiences at the airport since I've been blind. So
it's kind of cool though when I'm with him, because I can see what's going on, so I can kind of watch people and like, I see what you're doing there. I'm watching you, and it kind of keeps people in check. But
I'm watching you.
But yeah, like, I mean, sometimes they forget that I can see because he can't, so they'll just do stuff, and I'm like, I saw that. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, being out in public is a huge amount of good fodder. I mean, I know it's hard for Brian, but it's always very entertaining for me because it's usually people embarrassing themselves and learn to pay more attention to. When
you're ever out in public, and Brian may be the center of the conversation, but have you ever found that people start talking to you and they just kind of, because I've experienced that myself before. It's like, dude, I'm blind. I'm not deaf. I can speak.
No,
I'm deaf though, so
he's also deaf. So there's that. But no, I found people often prefer to address me instead. And one of my favorite things that I've ever seen, and it's happened more than once, is when we're at a restaurant and they want to give him the bill, or they want to give somebody the bill, and they'll hand it out, but they won't say anything, and he won't know it's there. And so they have a hard time making the next step, so they're like, take it at him.
Instead of just saying here, it's right here. So
and then they'll just look at me and they'll try to hand it to me, and I'll just shake my head. Nope, and you got to think this one through. And they're like, here, sir, and then it's fine. But it takes a minute for that next step to click in, and that's the kind of thing that I think it's good for people to have that embarrassing moment where they're messing it up because they're not processing what they need to be doing. And that was my favorite.
It just comes down to just treat people like you would treat anybody.
Well, that's the thing.
Like you would probably say, "Here's the thing," like to a person who's sighted. Like you'd probably say it too. It's so backwards. Yeah.
Chicken too. When people like men like to play chicken on the sidewalk, and for some reason it takes them forever to realize that Brian's not moving, and so
I'm not participating in that game. I didn't even aware that it's happening.
Yeah, so I get to watch them like puff up and like determine like go forward, and then have to leap out of the way at the last minute, like literally leap. Like a lot of times there's been some really theatrical like circus leaps because they're just last second, oh, he's not moving. I have to.
Do you think it's because they don't think I'm blind? Because a lot of people don't
He's faking
believe.
it.
Okay, well, I've told you 8 million times, if you wear your glasses, people think you're training the dog, because why would you be wearing eyeglasses if you can't see? That's
No, but I mean,
eye protection.
well,
do you-
but
did those instances happen when I was wearing my glasses?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, that's why.
yeah. Remember in Vegas was a big, and when we were in a casino, of course, that's the main place that we have the most issues.
So, Brian, do you get the same? So, do you ever travel with a cane, with a white cane?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But
do you
with the
find
glasses,
people
people-
acting differently?
Well, I mean, because of COVID, I have not traveled very much at all. So, but before that, I was able to see a little bit better. So I wasn't wearing my sunglasses. So I think that confused people. I would wear my prescription glasses. And so, but I've lost a lot of eyesight in the last couple of years, a lot. So, things have changed for sure. And I'm a lot more blind, and I look a lot more blind because I'm wearing my sunglasses now.
Yeah, and that was the thing. He was wearing eyeglasses, and so people were not. It was not registering.
Yeah, people see glasses and they automatically think that it fixes you to a point where you can see well enough to drive.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to say, I was under the misconception until I met Brian that I didn't realize that so many people that were blind, quote unquote, actually had sight. Like, I didn't realize what the small percentage have none.
Right. I'm actually considered blind.
Yeah, it's a huge,
Yeah.
I mean, super low to have no vision whatsoever. So
Yeah.
most people that are considered
I
blind
didn't know
have
that.
some.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's-
that's a really common misconception.
And most of those people that are completely dark or no light perception, they have prosthetic eyes, or I mean, not everybody, but it's usually, something like that where they've had some condition or trauma where they've had to have the glow, the eyeball removed.
Yeah, otherwise they can see, a lot of people can see different variations of light or shapes or contrast, but very few people are actually completely blind. That I didn't know. Who knew?
I had a roommate when I was 19. Actually, I had two roommates, and I remember we were sitting playing dominoes one night, and we're drinking and stuff, and this guy had known me for like a year, Jerry, and he got a little buzz, and he's all, "Go ahead, dude, just do it." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Take your eyeball out and roll it on the table." Well, it turns out that my other roommate Scott had been telling Jerry this whole time that I had a prosthetic eye, and Jerry bought into it. Yeah, like I don't.
You're like, I don't think I do that, but
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay. Because one of my eyes kind of twitches and it looks, you're looking over my shoulder. No, I'm not. But yeah,
well, and that's kind of get back is that where those hilarious moments that are uncomfortable for us or uncomfortable for other people. Those are the things where we're able to work off of. But but there's also like the question of longevity. How long can we talk about that? I mean, I guess forever if we keep going out and having new experiences. But I mean, I started to run out of places to take Brian. Like you'll on this whole vacation, like taking him to different places because we're actually not going anywhere, so I can only pretend so many places. Like we went to San Francisco, so I found a little bridge here and I took some fish and like hung it in front of his face so he could
I
smell
saw
it.
that one. Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of that one. That was pretty funny.
What's the best line he said was that time you took him to the Grand Canyon. He goes, "It smells like a dump."
Right, because it is. Yeah, because it's right by the
Yeah. But he was so serious about it, you know what I mean? It's Brian, you just have a way of phrasing things.
Yeah, Brian's so good. He's so funny. And my character's supposed to be inconsiderate, but not an asshole, not a total asshole, but just kind of like lazy and kind of spoiled, basically. And I get mine all the time. Like he sprays my hair in one with the hose, and like on accident, he's having a water gun fight with our kid, and he sprays my hair, and I flip out. So
And I send you to Iowa.
I love that one.
The pole one where I.
And then the in-laws locked you out?
Yeah,
Or-
the firing squad. So I tie him to the porch, and I have a firing squad with the water guns, and I have the whole family shoot him for messing up my hair. But I think that we could do the calling thing. We could do the little skits that follow their TikTok, like that formula. It's
So
hard,
those-
like I said, though. It's hard to think of things.
Well, when we were talking before, and Brian, just to go back on what you had asked earlier, you know, we had talked before about taking little vignettes of how you met. You guys talked about one time when you guys were kind of close to an edge, you know, the last time we were talking. So I think there's a lot of real stories. You know, when Brian met Rachel, or, you know what I mean, it can kind of be based on that and just your adventures.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. So I want to ask you, Indy, as an insider,
Consultant.
consultant. So how? I mean, does it feel like it has a strong like through line foundation or spine? Like the idea that its loss is the underlying thing that kind of ties it all together. Her loss with her breast cancer, mine with my vision, hearing, and mind, and then using you know, the comedic experiences that we have as kind of the foundation, or not the foundation, but the theme for each episode.
Yeah. No, I think that's an incredibly like valuable and concise way to do your show. I would just, you know, to add on that, just kind of make it fun is kind of one of the things that I often forget when I'm podcasting, because it's you know, through all the technicalities, or like a camera going down, or like, oh my card's full, all these things keep you from making it fun, right? What is considered work, right? So I would say try to break down all of those barriers so that the effort that it requires to create one of these things is low, you know, and the enthusiasm is high, right? Because you want to break down, like basically you just want to be able to just effortlessly talk about these things, right? So like the segments and all these things, like honestly, you could do none of it, you know. You just what are you guys are thinking about this week, and you guys just talk, you know, like you can do whatever you want, but it's kind of like just making those like say in the beginning of your episode, it's not a segment, it's just, you know, housekeeping. Yeah, how you doing? What are you thinking about this week? You know, and before you dive into something, you know, so there's just certain things that you could just, you know, tent poles of the show that can just kind of keep it running, keep it going, transition into another thought, where it's like you don't have to, it's not necessarily like an hour-long talk, right? It's kind of like 5-10 minute things that could go longer if they can, or if the conversation allows it. So I think just focusing on that would be critical.
Brian, can I ask Indy a question?
No,
You can ask me, and I'll ask Indy.
just any ideas, Indy, about the length of each episode? What's your gut tell you?
Well, advertiser, like if advertiser involved, it's mostly an hour long episodes. So I would shoot for that, just in case, you know, an advertiser wants to come along and make a contract with you. Okay. In that case, you wouldn't have to drastically change the duration of your show just to fit some advertiser. But also, like, there are podcasts that exist with ads that are shorter than an hour. It's just, you know, so I would say, however naturally long it is, I wouldn't say, don't extend it too long where the conversation's being stretched longer than it needs to be.
Right.
I would say, you know, try to hit an hour, but if you hit 54 and you guys are done, call it, you know. But if you want to go to an hour and 20, hour and 32 hours, that's fine too. You know, I've seen podcasts where like one podcast was like 2.5 hours, and they split it into 2 weeks, where they just released one half and released the second half. So I would just say, however long the conversation is, and if you think that, okay, like we're beating this dead horse here, or like I want more, those are the intuition should lead that duration.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad, Indy, that you brought up the idea of keeping the enthusiasm high and the stress of creating it low, because that's kind of what I did with the Blind Man in Black. Was I you know, in the past, you know, because of my experiences, I wanted everything to be completely professional, have an intro and outro, music, high production quality, great content. And I had to sacrifice, because of my vision loss and not being able to edit or do any of that right now. I just kind of said, am I going to do this at all? Or am I going to you know, gonna wait until I have all these things in place. And so I had to make the decision. I'm gonna not edit it. It's gonna go as long as it you know, it has to. And I want to make it as fun as possible. And that, you know, and then that was really important to me. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I do want it to be fun for everybody to involved.
Yeah, no, and I totally think like that's what you're getting after, right? Like the people who succeed are the people who made the product in the garage, like Apple, right? Like it was made in a garage, and they didn't say no, they didn't quit, right? So it's like these moments where you could do that, you know. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of like, yeah, right, asking yourself, do I even want to do this at all, even if it is less than my standards, right? And it's kind of like, had you waited until you had the budget for an editor and had all those things, you wouldn't have your dozens and dozens of episodes, right? You wouldn't have that body of work that you can go, okay, this is where we can level up from, right? Like we're never going to have our ducks in a row ever. Like when have we ever have you ever, like we're going to be 80 years old if we get that old, and we're still not going to have our shit in a row, you know, like, so like, let's just stop playing that game, you know, like just, you know, so like, that's what I'm saying. It's like if segments help make it easier to make, if just talking about your day makes it easier to make, whatever, encourages that like youthful, joyful expectation, right? Like when I was a kid, like I loved coming home from school and making music on my mom's iMac, you know, but like now I'm like, well, like I got all this work to do, and like that joyful expectation is gone because I'm an adult now. You know, when I had the time, I don't know, I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, that's important, because I mean, I one of the issues that I've done throughout my entire life is I've waited, and this goes with relationships, this goes with work, is I'm completely paralyzed unless I know it's going to be perfect.
No, and I'm the exact opposite. I'm the exact opposite. I've done a lot of my public speaking work has just been off the, you know, just winging it. And then if I fuck up, I know how to recover, you know, I just laugh about it and make, you know, and able to, and Brian's really good at that too, actually, you know, whenever things get kind of like weird for a second, we're both pretty good at recovering and bringing people in. And I think that makes it more personable as well. I think that if it's not, you know, if it's too produced or it's too scripted, or, you know, like I like to make mistakes in front of people and play it off and you know, own it, because that imperfection is part of our charm too, you know. That's another underlying theme in the whole thing is, you know, we're muddling through in general in life in general, like everybody is right now. Not to the extent where it's a, you know, a shit show, but you know, to the amount where it's not perfect.
Right.
Yeah, and that's another thing about embracing disability, is embracing the diversity of ability and differences, and being comfortable and accepting of it, you know. I think that's really important.
And
so
and
I
also,
think that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Indy.
No, sorry to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say that I think our weakness is tech. I think that's where we're at that's the thing that we struggle with the most, probably.
That's where Chobo Studios comes in, baby. You know? No, but I also think, like, to speak to it too, Brian, like to speak to you about this personally, it's like I went to community college in San Diego before going to university, and one of my fellow college students was a blind man who was very antisocial or didn't have very good social skills, and also his parents forbade him from using a cane, so he was reliant on other people to go anywhere, to the bathroom, to do anything. Like he had to grab onto your arm. Like he was, I think he's Korean, so his parents, I guess, were just too proud to see him using a cane for whatever reason, which is just so awful to me. And it's just so interesting, because like my perception of what a blind person was him. You know what I mean? And it's like I never knew. Like obviously you think it's capable. Like you made a podcast. You know, like you didn't let your disability keep you from these things. I'm not saying Paul did. I'm just saying he was put in his name was Paul. Shout out Paul. Love you, Paul. but you know, he was put in that scenario, so that was his world, that's all he knew. And it was just so sad for me because like when he went home, he was forced to study like all day, you know. So it was just so interesting how the external forces that can put you in scenarios unbeknownst to you can completely change the trajectory of your life. And it's all through what you think you can do, because he thought he couldn't do things.
Right.
Like I was like, have you ever thought about using a cane? It's like, oh no cane. Like it wasn't even a possibility. Freedom, you know, like freedom of mobility, and at least doing what he wanted to do, or just going to the bathroom.
Yeah, and you know, it may be you know, just his parents, or it could be something more on the macrocosm. But I think that you know, it's what, you know, our society here is very ableist. And so there has been a lot of, you know, progress made in terms of disability accessibility and so on. But we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
And so with that said, you know, I'm still pretty ableist in my mind. I have a lot of, I have to like rewire my brain because, you know, and I'm coming to grips with this right now. Is I have spent, you know, I went to Cal Arts, I did acting, and then I went to UCLA, got my master's degree in directing, and that's what I wanted to do. But when I started to lose my eyesight, like shortly, I mean, I really started, things started changing right when I graduated UCLA. And I thought I was not able to do it. So instead of like doing what I wanted to do and just doing it differently, I thought, oh, I have to do it, you know, a certain way, so I can't do it, you know. And that's and that's where I am right now in my life, is like having to deal with the regret of what the fuck did I do with most of my life? I didn't do what I wanted to do, you know. And now everybody's depressed. I'm sorry.
No, I think what the best part about that is, Brian, is that it's never too late. You know, there have been, you know, homeless people in their 40s that became millionaires in their 50s. You know, like it's possible. It's just not quitting. You know, that's what it kind of comes down to. And you have so much stories. Like this is a vessel through which you can not quit that opportunity, right? Where it's like you have this power to, like, what if Paul my homie Paul, love you, Paul. What if homie Paul yeah, love you, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
I'm sharing this with Paul. You know, what if he, you know, breaks free from these things that maybe I'm perceiving him to be in a prison. I don't know. maybe he's fine. I don't know. but you know, I think you could be a vessel through which other people who may think they can't do that think, well, this guy's making a podcast, I can do that. Like I can do it. You know, so I think that that's a very valuable thing that's is not explicit, right? It's just implicit. It's like it's the value you get from seeing somebody else who has what you have doing something regardless of their situation, you know. So, and you've gone through the regret of quitting, you know, so like that's a huge story to tell, right? And like this is just another opportunity to not quit and to tell that story. And I think, you know, maybe you guys think that you may not have enough to cover an hour from week to week or whatever, but I think the more you guys unearth these things, the more you're going to find to talk about. And the more you're going to find that your audience just cares about what you guys, you know, your dynamic together. So that's the end of my podcast for now.
That was my TED Talk. Thank you. What do you think, Randy?
Did he leave?
Yeah,
No, I'm here. I just
stunned him, guys.
No, I'm just thinking. He said weekly, so that I kind of got stuck on because
that just freaked him out.
It did.
You're right. We're not going to do it weekly, Randy. Don't worry. I have a 7.
Okay.
I can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, Indy, what we're thinking is because, you know, I have a day job, Randy has a day job,
mm-hmm.
and you know,
I do too. Yeah.
Someday I'm going to finish a script. I swear to God. That's my day job.
Right.
To not write my script.
So, I mean, we're all trying to, I would love to be able to quit my job and
Me
focus
too.
Me too.
And do
stand-up
this.
comedy and this, but getting there is the journey. So, I think we're going to try to do once a month. Is that what do you feel like that's going to be an issue,
Or will
Indy?
that be detrimental?
I would say honestly that may, I don't know. It may be a little bit too infrequent. I would say 2 weeks is actually a pretty good
Twice a
buffer
month.
because we used to, like, say John's show was a weekly show and that was a grind, right? Like that was just so much of a grind. But Around the Bag with Ian Bag, this new show we're producing, is bi-weekly until we get sponsors, which has been literally, like, I felt like a complete ton off my shoulders, because that extra week is just so much extra time, but also is enough time for people to not forget about the show because that's the thing, you're fighting against these algorithms, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like if it's a monthly show, nobody's going to see it, nobody's going to care, and people and Instagram is going to prioritize that, or TikTok, so it's like, I think if the podcast would be like maybe every other week, then you could actually make more content for like clips from your podcast, and that would just supplement your TikTok even more and give you more.
Yeah, I was going to say,
right?
we could put little things. I mean, we can do 2 episodes, but then we could put other small things that we pull from those to
Right.
fill in the
Yeah.
time.
So the whole like I love content strategy and all this kind of, like, I basically my whole thing of it is like, I make a whole, like, a podcast is like I call it like a hero piece of content, right? It's the recording session, and like, this is one thing in time, right? And then it spawns segments that we can use for longer things, like YouTube clips, right? Those could be longer. They don't have to be short, sweet, vertical, in people's feeds. And then, so like, you have your longer piece, then you have your longer clips, and then you have your reels and your TikToks, right? So it kind of feeds itself, where one recording session can give you YouTube clips, can give you TikTok clips. And then it's basically just, and then over time, you could just refresh some of those if you don't have enough clips, right? So it's
Right.
kind of like you're growing a bank of content and then making clips from that content, and then being able to reuse the later on 6 months down the line when people have already forgotten about it, and say, oh, we need to post today. Let's just post the thing that we posted 6 months ago that did really well, or whatever, just to keep the algorithm going. So it's just
Momentum.
kind of like keeping on top of that hero piece. You'll always have stuff to use, right? So that longer podcast form of content.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm pretty good about keeping up with that as long as the content is already prepared. Like, remembering to schedule it is easy. It's just juggling creating it at the same time. So I definitely wanted to get as much already filmed as possible before we launch. Just have a bunch of stuff already done.
100%.
So that it's
I would
just,
say have your first 2 weeks, your first month done.
I
That
was
way,
sick of months.
no, honestly,
But,
don't think that far ahead. Don't think that far ahead. Like, it's just gonna be too daunting. And also, like, people, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, just to you don't need that huge bank. You just need a bank enough so that you can work on quality content, right? So you don't need a month's worth of time to make one episode.
See, I have ADHD,
or-
so I'm not consistent. So sometimes I do. Every once in a while, I absolutely need a
Right.
6-month bank. But
There's another theme right there.
But I guess what come like at the core of that, it contributes to posting less than it does more.
I see.
So that's all I mean. Where it's like, if you just go, I'm not worrying about this huge mound of work. That's what makes it not fun, right? I'm just worrying about this first month, because if you're gonna launch something, that needs to be special, and kind of like anticipating this work that has yet to happen just makes this current work even less, right? So taking that energy off of your weighting you down just gives you more enthusiasm to make what you're making right now, right? It's just kind of, you could still do a bank, and if you do bi-weekly, you'll realize. Right. So just try to combat that a little bit, where it's just like, you can still do a bank. I'm not saying don't bank. I love banking everything, But just, manageable quantities to where it's like, keep it fun. Like that's at the core of it. People are going to keep listening because you are enthusiastic about doing it.
Right.
And if it's draining, people are going to notice and stop watching.
Yeah. And the other thing is we don't want to go too far ahead because then we're missing topical stuff, right?
No, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. And also you can bank a crap ton of like, say, segments that would go in multiple shows. If you want to scratch that itch, make 25 5-minute videos
Of the little skits or the little
right.
the little segments.
Yeah, and then you go, okay, I feel better. We have a bank of content now.
Those are done, so we can focus on
right. So yeah, I would just say bi-weekly is probably the better tug of war there, where you could still get the benefit of non-weekly, but also like still people remember you, so yeah, that's my 2 cents there.
Randy, what do you think about bi-weekly?
I think it's doable as long as we have enough material to start working with.
Well, I've been writing some material already. So.
Yeah, I think we could do that.
And what are your thoughts on bisexuality?
My thoughts on bisexuality?
Just generally speaking, yeah, how do you feel about that?
I was going to ask Indy if he has to use a cloud lifter with his mic.
Way to avoid that question.
Great question.
He's got an SM7B. I have the same mic, but I have to boost the gain on it with another device.
Yeah. Well, you're great at deflecting. That's awesome. That was class. That was like a news anchor. I love that. But yes, I do use a cloud lifter. I use a 4-channel cloud lifter.
Okay.
But also, I'm not using it right now. I'm using the Rodecaster.
What's your interface?
At the moment.
Okay.
Using the Rodecaster.
That's
this thing is the best $600 I've ever spent in my life.
So it's got enough gain for the mic, obviously. You're not having to peg
it's got preamps in it that it's basically got built-in cloud lifters.
Okay.
For all the techies out there. Yeah.
Cool.
So
by the way, we can charge for professional advice on this episode, right?
Yes, $250 an hour.
Strategy and yeah.
Who are you charging? Because
I'm broke. So speaking of like hardware and things like that, so I mean, what do we really need to make it, a decent production
not a
quality?
Zoom call? Yeah. I use a Sony AX33 camera, which is currently discontinued.
Well, how are we going to get that?
No, I mean discontinued in terms from the manufacturer. I mean, you could buy them.
Okay.
But the reason why I use those, it's a 4K camera and it's a camcorder, so it records longer than 30 minutes. So I could just hit record and basically let it go for 5 hours if I needed to.
So what is that? $4,000?
When I got it, it was $600, and that was in 2020. So it may be 5-ish now. But I would say a camcorder, if you can find one, is probably going to be your best bet for just not caring about the video, because all you want to do is just hit record and just do your show.
right.
Because if you're going to use like a DSLR or a more consumer camera that doesn't shoot that, you're going to constantly be hitting that record button every 30 minutes, and you're going to get black in your show. So that was when I first started podcasting. That's how we did it. It would stop every 13 minutes or whatever, and I would hit the record button, and I'd put our logo on the screen so it wouldn't go black. So camcorders and basically mics and recorders or audio recorders.
So, well, I purchased for work. I purchased I purchased a Panasonic 4K, and it was like $3,000. Like, but like what I mean, what realistically, what a minimum, like what do we
minimum iPhone at minimum. If you got enough storage to record an hour-long thing, an iPhone is a perfect thing to use.
Well, what about up from that?
That? Just any camcorder, honestly, that you can afford. Anything, because camcorders will record longer than 30 minutes.
What's the camera that you gave me, Brian?
I got a technical question too. So you're recording audio separately. So how are you bringing them together and then syncing? There's nothing
Yeah.
worse than watching somebody talk and their mouth's not moving, but you can hear it, and they're, you know what I mean? It's like a half second
Right.
behind.
So there's multiple ways you could do it. I do it multiple ways depending on how we produce it, but I guess I have to list out gear again. So my camcorder is feeding into a ATEM Mini Pro ISO switcher, right? So that switcher is recording the video feed, right? Now
Okay.
that switcher also has a aux audio in.
Mm-hmm.
So I take the main mix out and go straight into the ATEM switcher.
Okay.
Now when I do that, I have to lower the gain considerably on the switcher so I get a clear audio signal. It'll just be red, just completely red if you don't change anything. I've done a recording where it's just hitting it. Like because my main mix was so loud that the Rodecaster it was just red the whole time. So you have to like turn the gain down in the app. It's ridiculous. So there's things where it's a lot of upfront work to not have to do it in the back end.
Yeah.
And then the other way to do it is just to record it separately, throw it into an editing suite, and sync it. So one
That's probably
involves a
what we'll
lot
do.
of money and time up front, and then one doesn't involve a lot of money but technical know-how on how to sync footage.
We may email you questions if you're all right with that, with regarding technical aspects.
No,
We may
great.
come over. We may just show up and be like, wait, ha.
But Indy, let's talk a little bit before we close up. Let's talk about Chobo
Jobo.
and
Yeah.
what you do for folks.
Yeah, so we produce podcasts and we have event space in Los Angeles. So basically it's in a residential area, so we're not in an office building yet. But we're in a beautiful 2-bedroom back house in a very beautiful location in Van Nuys, California, and we charge hourly for podcasting. We do it's an $125 for just audio an hour. Single cam video podcasts are $150 an hour, and multicam podcasts are $250 an hour. And then we also have we could do editing and logo creation and distribution, audio distribution, video distribution. We can manage your YouTube pages, Patreon pages for a fee, stuff like that. And then we also just create our own podcast too. You could see that at our studios is chobostudios.com, and then our podcast is chobopodcast.com. But you could see both links to both of them at chobo.co. So many URLs, but chobostudios.com, chobopodcast.com, or chobo.co for both.
That's a lot of websites.
I love buying domains, guys.
Me too.
You love what?
I love buying domains.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Rachel. Yeah,
Yeah.
she enjoys that as well. So for those
you never
listening,
know when you're going to need them.
Yeah.
so for those listening and watching, you can go to Chobo. That's C is in Charlie, H is in Hotel, O is in Oscar, B is in Bravo, O is in Oscar .co. Did that work?
You didn't spell out the last letters. I didn't.
Oh, that's
Gotcha.
after Chobo, it's Charlie Oscar.
Whiskey Tango
Unless you want
Foxtrot.
just the podcast, and then it's C as in.
Oh man.
So anything anybody wants to say? What Indy, is there any final thoughts that you have about podcasting or what we're doing, or and be honest with us? I mean, what do you think? What do you think? What do we have here?
If I'm being honest, I say you guys plan more than you do, and you guys should do more than you plan.
Yeah.
I love it. Remember that when we talked this week, Brian.
Okay.
Because that's what I've noticed too. Because when we talk about things and not do them, they just don't happen. Whether we just do them and go, oh, that sucked, we do this different next time, right? So that's what you guys
I don't
have already
like
done is that. So
Yeah, I'm not a fan of meetings about meetings. So
I think honestly, just what makes your show great is you too. You're dynamic, and also bringing on guests if you can have it in person's better than Zoom. But if you have to get people on Zoom, bring that in segments. Just make it fun for you guys. Because if it's fun for you, it'll be fun for us. So just hammer that in.
I really
think
love
it'll be
bringing guests
successful.
on. I really want to keep that aspect because that's been really fun.
Yeah, and also you don't have to talk, and the podcast makes itself. It's like it's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I love.
Randy, do you have anything you'd like to say before we close up?
Thank you, Indy. This was a wealth of knowledge. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I feel like I'm a little out of my league, but I'm really looking forward to doing this. And yeah, just
We can
thank
do
you.
this. How hard can it be?
Also, I'm a complete idiot. So there's
Well, that makes us feel better. Andy, thank you so much for your time and the invaluable advice, and we really, really appreciate it because we really respect
course.
what you do. And you know, we're not totally you know, starting fresh, but we kind of don't know what we're doing. So it
Nobody
really,
knows what they're doing unless they're really like they're doctors or something. So
no,
it's
they
all
don't know
chill.
what they're doing
Yeah.
either. Trust me. They're winging it too.
All right. Well, it's always great
It's
to be here on the
practice.
Blind Man in Black. It's been an honor. Thank you guys. Appreciate
Yeah, thank you so much, Indy. We really appreciate your guidance and wisdom. And everybody, go to chobo.co. Yeah, thank you so much. All right. So now we're going to have our awkward ending.
No 40-minute answer.
I need an answer to that question, and it has to be at least 40 minutes long.
Let's have a
Indy,
meeting
what
about it
he's
first.
referring to is we did a live on our Exhausting Snyders TikTok thing.
it. Oh, you were
where-
talking about me.
No,
Oh,
no, sorry
right.
about that. No, it's an inside joke.
No, what
Great,
happened
awesome.
was we did a live on our TikTok, Exhausting Snyders, where the segment was called Ask a High Blind Guy.
I love it.
And so I was high, and then folks would type in their questions and things like that. And at one point, somebody asked me a question, and I was talking, and it was only maybe I don't know, a minute, and I was like, that felt like 40 minutes. That was a 40-minute answer. And then you actually were on there, Randy,
Yep.
and what did
Yeah.
you say?
It's something I said. You got another 40-minute answer or something like that. But
The question
just-
Randy asked, he said, please answer within 40 minutes.
That's right. Yeah, and we were doing text. We were doing through the comments.
It was really funny.
Also,
Yeah.
I gotta say, High Blind Guy, I would pay to see that on Patreon. So that has to be exclusive to Patreon.
It's
Okay.
really funny too, because he's
You gotta
annoying.
promise me that.
No, that's a great idea. Yeah, you're absolutely
It's those things. It's like what you're already creating. Just put it behind a wall.
Okay, we're gonna build a wall and make somebody pay for it.
We'll make podcasting great again.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Indy Fawcett. Appreciate you being here. Chobo, go there now. All right, here we go. Awkward ending.
Thanks. Love you guys.
Ah, shit. Now it's gonna be really awkward. I screwed up.
What are you doing?
Man.
All right, we're out.
It's still recording, it says.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's uncomfortable.